What's up, everybody? Welcome to LED Live. We have a really cool show today, and we're going to be looking at a topic that it really impacts us all because paganism has infiltrated our culture in such a submersive way. I mean, it's really nothing new. You look at the Bible, and it was like Judaism and paganism, and it's just all over. And so, really, that's the way our society is today, right? Like, paganism is just all around us, but it's kind of been veiled. It's kind of been disguised over time and even Christianized in certain ways, right?
Yes, exactly. It's been immersive in all of our culture today. In fact, it's kind of like I hate to pop it, but it's kind of a unearthed one world type thing going on.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that probably in the next kind of video over this, but it is huge. It is actually infiltrating everyone's life.
Yeah, so we talk about it a lot. That anybody who's really like a scholar or just a student of the Bible and prophecy, we know there's going to come a time in the end where everyone is going to be worshiping the dragon. Everybody's going to be
and the
engaged,
beast.
in this false system of worship that looks so close to the truth, coexist, kumbaya, peace and safety and all this stuff. But there's going to be a group of people who say, no, we stand on, we keep the commandments of God, and we have the faith and the testimony of Jesus Christ. And they're going to be public enemy number one because you're not going with the system. Why are you being such a extremist? Because I stand on thus saith the Lord. And even a lot of Christians today, they're not reading their Bible. They're going to church once a week. They're maybe watching a few videos. And most of the time it's about, hey, you can be rich and all these things. And so they're going to be setting themselves up for deception because deception's so close to the truth that if you don't know the true truth, you're going to fall for the deception.
Yes, exactly. And that's perfect because that's what we're going to be finding out is where do these holidays come from?
Holidays, all right.
Yeah, holidays.
A lot of people have a lot of questions on this topic, and we have lightly addressed it. So I'm excited to kind of bring this up and talk about it because, like you said, I think worship at its core is what this is all about. It's what the war in heaven began over. It's what's going to end. And so the devil's always used this just kind of false worship in society to basically lead the true believers away. So how can we protect against that? And I think you have to talk about some of these issues. So I'm excited to dive into this.
That word holiday is holy day, right?
Yes, it is.
So it is a form of worship.
So let's get into this. We are, going to unmask the holidays and their origins. And
wow,
that's a pretty
This is what it would look like if you had spiritual eyes and you could see in the spirit world what's really going on. You know the movie They Live, where everything looks normal and he puts on those sunglasses and everything's black and white, but billboards say like obey, consume, and the money says you are God and all these things. It's I kind of feel like that sometimes in life. It's like we're so used to this stuff, we think it's normal, and then you find out, oh, it's got a really terrible origin. Even like the nursery rhymes for kids and stuff, like they're all about polio and London Bridge is falling down. Yay, let's sing about it.
Especially like this time of year, my subdivision that I live in, it's like there's these giant like Halloween things that they put out in their front yard. It's like people hanging from like a tree. And I mean, that's awful. Like what if you had somebody close to you that, maybe potentially committed suicide or something? Like, why do we glorify this stuff? It's crazy.
Isn't it Anton LaVey, who is the founder of the Church of Satan or the Satanic Church, one of those two, who says that he's glad that once a year Christian parents will allow the children to worship the devil, which is on Halloween.
Satanists aren't coming into church for one day a week, one day a year, so it's just kind of interesting that Christians feel comfortable to do that, but it's not happening on the reverse.
Right. Wow, this is getting in depth already. Okay, so first we have to start out where things began, and that is at the flood. We have the rebellion. It was brought by the flood. It spread through Nimrod after the flood. Because you have to think about this. We have a people who are just rebelling against God in their ways of really wanting to follow after their own hearts continuously. And God says it's evil. But then after they landed, I don't know if anyone has ever paid attention to this in depth, but after they landed from the ark, you have Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And then Ham has a son named Cush, and Cush has a son named Nimrod, and everything starts from there. So let's just follow that up with the verse. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. So that was, right during the flood that he said that, or before it, I should say.
It's crazy that, like, God has to destroy a lot of people. I mean, there's like 8 people out of the world made it through that experience. Like, that's like such a small fraction of people. And then it just happens 1 or 2 generations away from there.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
And then we're still dealing with the effects of the choices that these people made. It's crazy.
I think it definitely is Satan. He plants seeds in our life, or in our hearts, I guess, and they just grow and take off. And he knew that God had just killed off most of the world, and that he had to work on one of those sons, their hearts, to actually birth, I guess, more evil or continue it. So we're going to take a look at what he did. So first, his name has such significance. His name is Marad in the Hebrew. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but to rebel. The name Nimrod
means to rebel.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to consider that, like, was he named and then his actions kind of follow his name? I mean, that's kind of a strange thing to like call him bad. And it's like, this guy's got to rebel. He's a rebel. He's a rebel.
I don't know. This might be way out there, but I've talked to another friend about this too. We think that Satan perverts everything that's true. And so when you think about things like, oh, what's your sign and stuff like that's totally new age and it's not anything. But is there really something about when you're born? Does it kind of set your character traits or whatever? And like names is synonymous with character.
So his name already has significance here. It says the name Nimrod is derived from the Hebrew verb marad, meaning rebel. Adding an N before the M, apparently, turns it into an infinite construct, Nimrod. Jeff A. Benner at the Ancient Hebrew Research Center writes, in the ancient Hebrew Semitic cultures, a person's name was closely related to their character, and therefore Nimrod's name fits well with his personality. The person Nimrod is only mentioned in Genesis 10:8 and 9, but these 2 passages speak volumes about the character of Nimrod. The standard translation of verse 9 is something like, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. So we're going to kind of dive into this a little bit deeper, because the word hunter in the Bible actually has great significance as well. So the only 2 people that it's referring to here is Nimrod and Esau, as we see, the 2 brothers of Jacob. The twin brother of Jacob, sorry. From the story of Esau and Jacob, we know that Esau was not the most respectful person. Taking his birthright, trying to sell it over pot of soup, I guess, lentils. Not only did he despise his birthright, but to spite his parents, he married foreign women.
Wow.
And we know how much God tells us not to do that.
That's right. Got to be equally yoked.
Yes.
Just to clarify, somebody that might not, this might be their first video or something.
Oh, yeah.
We're not saying like God doesn't want you with people of other races or anything. You're talking about like your belief system, unequally yoked. Like these were pagan women. And
yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally different kind of cultural backgrounds.
Right.
Yes, for sure. So from the vantage point they're coming from, this means in the Hebraic perspective that hunters are always seen in a negative light. In verse 8, it states that he was the first on earth to be a mighty man. The Hebrew phrase may also be translated as he made a profaning by being a mighty one in the land. To add to this, verse 9 states that he was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. But the word before in Hebrew is lifni, and literally means to the face of, and in this case, to the face of Yahweh. He was a mighty hunter in place of Yahweh, implying that he, rather than Yahweh, is the provider of the people.
Wow.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like that he provides for himself or something.
Yes. Well, we'll go
like
on to
he's
see.
self-sufficient, which is basically the basis of all pagan religions.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
I mean, they're all kind of tie back to like, you know, you have to do this and this and this, which is your self-sufficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. He was, of course, a ruler of many different civilizations, though, and he built many cities. We'll cover that as well. But because of that, if he's claiming to be the leader of those cities and such, he definitely is providing for their livelihood. He's, for their safety. He's saying, I basically am everything.
He's God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they treated him like that, right?
Yes.
I mean, Nimrod. I don't know if you're going to get into this,
Yep.
but it's like he when he died, they thought that he went into the stars, and that's kind of where we start getting star worship.
Yes.
Okay, love
Yes.
it. Yeah, this is going to get exciting.
Yes. So let's just cover the last thing here. One final clue in the character of Nimrod is how the Semitic root MRD, it's usually doesn't have vowels, so that's how it was stated, has been used even into our own time. The ancient Semitic root MRD, marad, is the origin of our words marauder and murder.
Wow. So the term murder literally came from Nimrod's name.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It has derivatives of it, yes.
So if you're a murderer, you're being compared to the character of Nimrod.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just for reference in the Bible, we need to see where Nimrod came from. For those who don't know, I've heard some people, they come up to me when I've talked about this and they go, well, is Nimrod really in the Bible, or where is he in the Bible? So Genesis 10, 8 through 10 says, Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. So yeah, he had a lot of different cities that he started.
So he was the creator of Babylon.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. This guy, a biblical archaeologist, states that this is not a positive comment. His name is Dr. David P. Livingston. It is more likely a derisive term of a type, a representative of a system that is epitomized in rebellion against the Creator, the one true God.
Wow.
And it's like crazy. Like they had access to people that saw the world get destroyed. I mean, you're like 1-2 generations away from
Right.
that
And they got
experience.
old. They got really old. So
And
they
like,
were
what,
alive.
you have no fear of God? Like, you could clearly heard the story of what God's capable of doing in the face of rebellion.
Yes.
Like, wow. Like, I mean, that's like a rebellion on a whole nother level.
I don't know. People thought that the Tower of Babel was to escape another flood. And they were just like, hey, we can escape it this time, So yeah, it's straight up a city of rebellion. Even like Babylon, you just say that. There's a strip club, local strip club named Babylon. Like that's the name of the strip club.
Even the movie that came out, Babylon.
Yeah.
Which really was about the craziness of Hollywood. You're talking about the one with Brad Pitt. And, just like nonsense of just absolute debauchery.
You did a video on the Grammys, which got a lot of views, and it's there's Jim Carrey.
I'm also here because the AFI is paying me $20 million and $3, making me the highest paid megalomaniacal boy king in all of Babylon.
A golden idol to worship. Kneel before your God, Babylon!
Well, they were making fun of reality television because that's always been like the ugly stepchild of the these guys don't deserve to be here. And here we have to honor these people. So it was literally him going, all right, you guys get your worship now. And they were obviously making a joke, but there's a truth in all those jokes.
Well, even when you walked in Hollywood, there was a plaque that called it Babylon, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's still there. I mean, if you go to where they actually hold the Oscar ceremony, that that mall that's right there is called the it's like the Hollywood and Highlands. I don't know if there's actually a proper name for it, but that place where the floor is called the Babylonian Court. And there's a plaque on the wall that says right there.
So that just makes me think about, if this is clearly Babylon is a city of rebellion, we know that Babylon was wicked. Why do we defend Hollywood that clearly like calls themselves Babylon? It's like so in your face, and yet even Christians will defend Hollywood against things that we say about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's like I guess my answer back to some of those people is like I hope you defend God like you defend that. Like just
right.
Just I hope you're at least making a two-way street. Like don't just defend the world and not God.
Amen.
So
yes, amen. So we're gonna see that. Well, there's Babylon for you.
Mm.
And
It's actually a really beautiful
this
city.
I wonder how big it really was.
Oh, I know. And how,
it would have had to have been higher than mountains for them to think that they could escape a flood,
yes. But with all the gardens going on, it would have been so beautiful.
Right. These guys knew how to build.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as we dive into the meat of this, we're going to visit historian Josephus. He speaks about him from 37 AD, stating, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man, and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God, as if it were through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He, Nimrod, also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence upon his own power. He also said he would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he, Nimrod, would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers."
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of like a very satanic mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
really.
mean, that's like straight Lucifer himself. I'm going to like protect these people. I'm going to provide for them. And if you try to harm them again,
Yes.
I'm going to build something that you can't destroy, but he can't.
Yeah, his audacity was amazing. Not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And the tower that they built, well, we're going to see that it has lots of meaning as well. In the act of building the Tower of Babel, we see his rebellious heart from Genesis 11:4. It says, "Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth.'" So Babel in the Hebrew means to confuse or confound, because we know that God, that's what he did to make it stop. He just confused all the languages and ceased all building.
What a merciful act. He could have just destroyed them,
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, you know what? I'll give you another kind of chance.
And the fact that he came down, like he wanted to like see it. I just think that's cool. Like what a personal God.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, I've heard, people have been telling me, I'm going to go down there and see it for myself.
Yeah, he doesn't bring judgment on a knee-jerk reaction like, oh, that's what's being done. Send down fire. He's like, wait, I want to inspect it,
Right.
investigate myself.
I want to make sure it's as bad as what they're telling me it is. And you go down there and it's like this prideful, like, we're building this in the face of God, It's like, wow.
And he still shows mercy, even with like the flood. It was like Noah built an ark. And while you're doing it for 120 years, preach the gospel and tell them that they can get on.
Yeah.
He was still that long suffering.
Inviting, to see something miraculous, all the animals getting down there, and still, you can get on.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Crazy.
Where we're going, though, and this is an interesting meaning, in Babylon, in the Greek, it means the gate of the gods.
I never knew that.
For those who want to know where this happened, again, God's punishment for this was that he came down. He called it Babel, or confusion. For there God confused the language of the people, which forced them to scatter. This heaven-defying group of people wanted one government to rule the world.
Ooh, interesting.
Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And one religion to sway the hearts of mankind. This was Satan's attempt to defy God and his authority, and the ringleader of his scheme was Nimrod. But God came down and stopped this worldwide rebellion at Babel, in defiance of his command for mankind to replenish the earth, by confusing their language into many languages so they could not understand one another's speech. Mankind discontinued the building of Babel and were scattered to different parts of the world.
Yeah, that first paragraph, that's just like, it's describing our day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We're trying to build a one world religion, a one world government. And I wonder who our Nimrod is today.
So what did Nimrod do in response to this? That is the biggest question, because it sparked everything. That's where everything got kindled and birthed probably the most satanic thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
So Nimrod had a plan to weld together and strengthen this evil religious system, and so he married his own mother.
Wow, disgusting.
Her name is Semiramis. So that was the first,
Incest.
incest,
Yeah.
the first kind of deity type forming, wife-mother type thing, like you see in tragedies all the time. This was their playoff of this, pretty much. They're patterning that after the actual events of Nimrod and Babylon. So she was the first deified queen of Babylon, and Nimrod was the first deified king. Of course, incest was used here as a basis to unite the newly false religious system. This false system had its sacrificial plan, just as God had a plan of sacrifice. But Satan's pagan worship required the offering up or sacrifice of human beings, which is often the sons and daughters of the worshipers. A counterfeit holy day was instituted in honor of the sun god, or Sunday, and this was designed by Satan to rob God of his peculiar authority as the creator of the universe, as designated by his holy day, the Sabbath.
Yeah, Satan just counterfeiting everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, the ultimate demonstration of something so opposite of God is to sacrifice your loved ones.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about how evil that really truly is. I mean, even Jesus was like, look, like somebody would die for their family maybe, or friend, but for other people, like these guys are sacrificing their own children.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy. It's mind-boggling how you could even get to that space to begin with, but I'm sure they were all just satanically controlled at that point.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very sure. So Nimrod, the second part that we're on, Nimrod's and Semiramis' followers plunged so deeply into sin and the occult that they even sacrificed babies to Satan in their worship of him, creating Baal worship, as we know, or Baal. Some people call it Baal, Baal. Even Bel, I've seen Bel.
You see that too.
We'll just need to keep that in mind as we go on. But this became a common practice until it is said that Shem, do you remember Shem, who was a son of Noah?
Yep.
He was probably an older guy, right, at this point.
Yeah.
He came along and he actually killed Nimrod. Cut him into small pieces as an example to others not to commit such abominable sins and not to follow such evil religious practices.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
They did that in the name of God.
He did.
Yeah.
He was blessed for it.
Wow.
It's like David, slaying Goliath to defend God.
He walked around with the head.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, it's crazy what these guys did.
But of course, there's always an action for there's a reaction, for every action. So we're going to see what happened with this movement that was created. So here's just a depiction. And this brought on the use of the pagan sun wheel, which we will see. So this is where it all starts exploding here.
Wow, there's a lot of stuff on there.
I am going to just point out a few. Let me know what stands out to you. We'll just start talking about this real quick.
Well, all my life I've heard that the peace sign was bad. We hear like peace. Oh, it's it's a good word, peace. Everybody loves peace, but I've always been told it was a upside down broken cross. Later in life, I found out it was called the crow's foot or the witch's foot, and it's like you'll see it on runes and stuff. It's part of witchcraft. and it's all over people's clothing and everything.
Yeah.
It's made to be popular.
Mm-hmm. And just since you mentioned that, you have ones like that where you don't even have to draw the circle around the peace sign. It still means that same symbol. It's still the pagan sun. Here we have the Babylonian sun wheel with its eagle on it. And the black sun is actually, today it's still a black sun cult, where the Nazis derived their Nazi symbol. And then it became this.
Wow.
Which that symbol goes way back. I mean, you'll see it engraved in buildings and things like in Asia and
India, I think.
It's
all
under the
over.
foot of Buddha.
That's right.
Wow, yeah.
Maybe
That's
in
the
the next
Jewish
slide.
Kabbalah.
It is.
The tree of Kabbalah.
We have some other ancient ones, the one with the red and the dots.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where it went from there. And of course, people like to joke. That's why we have the first invention of the wheel. Because that's what was on everyone's mind. It was just the way they worshipped. We have the Celtic knot down here. So beautiful, but doesn't represent good things. We have the sign of Horus, which is what that became as well, just putting a plus sign pretty much together.
That's the Disturbed logo, which is always interesting. That Disturbed was kind of pushing that whole movement of coexist. All religions lead to God. I mean, you got the crescent moon, there's a triangle, there's a hexagram, pentagram, and then I'm seeing probably the reason it's on there is this circle with a plus in it. So that's the sun wheel. So
Actually, all of it, because you end up having an overlay of pentagram basically in the middle, and your seasons are on the outside, just like in that Wiccan wheel right there. They overlay the moon's phases and cycles and all the holidays and the dates and your zodiac sign. That's why we're going up here. The zodiac sign for everything, and as well as the planets that you are worshiping alongside of it. So it all becomes astrology and meditation and all Wiccanism and the Ankh from the Egyptians. It's all the same. And like the Kabbalah, the tree of Kabbalah. And we have the Christian symbol. That's the hard part, is that we need to realize that even the cross was actually the cross of Tammuz. And Semiramis and Nimrod had a son named Tammuz. When she got pregnant, unfortunately, from Nimrod, they birthed a son named Tammuz, and he became kind of their infant god. So Nimrod was known as the sun god. Semiramis was known as the moon god. And then Tammuz, I'm not sure exactly, he's just kind of the god of everything else. And they used the cross, especially in Rome, to sacrifice or discipline all the criminals on the cross of Tammuz.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know I've heard that too, that it's like a pagan symbol. And I'm like, well, of course it was pagans that crucified Jesus to it. If Jesus was beheaded, we'd be wearing a guillotine around our neck in memory of Jesus.
Yeah,
It's weird that we see that symbol and we automatically, you see that symbol, you think of Christianity, you think of Jesus, yet it was a lot of people were killed on one of those.
Yeah. For sure.
But it is interesting when you think about the connection with Tammuz. How many people in Hollywood wear a Christian cross, dude? Like
everybody, and it's like you don't believe that,
Right?
That's your flaunting it, like
Yeah, because you got these rappers that are sitting there like drinking and smoking, and the girls all around them, and they're rocking this huge cross and it's swinging. And it's just a complete
Doesn't
mockery.
make any sense.
Yeah, that's really what it was. I remember when Roger Minot was talking about them singing hymns, like out of the hymnal in satanic worship ceremonies, and it was just an actual act of blasphemy. That's pretty much what it's there for. Here's a piece of straight in your face blasphemy.
Yeah,
Right.
When I was obsessed with Marilyn Manson, was gothic. I would wear a shirt about Jesus as a mockery, just like irony or whatever. People knew when they saw me I wasn't a Christian.
Yeah, that's a hard one to take. I never thought people would actually do that on purpose. I know that sounds weird, but to actually just blatantly mock you to your face if you are Christian, or God to his face, I didn't think about that.
Well, yeah, it's changed drastically in a short time. Because when I was growing up, you'd ask anybody. I mean, I grew up in the Bible Belt, the South or whatever, but you ask anybody, do you believe in God? Oh yeah. Are you going to heaven? Oh yeah, I'm going to heaven. You know, they might be drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette, but it was still looked at as a positive thing to be a Christian. It means you're a trustworthy person. It means that you go to church every week. It doesn't matter if it changes your life or not, but people generally, if you found out, oh, you can trust him, you can buy that car from that guy, he's a Christian, you know. Now it's totally different. In just 30 years, now to be a Christian, you must be a bigot, you must be a hater, you must be hate speech, all this stuff. It's changed rapidly.
They've turned it on its head for sure. We have a Middle Eastern star here with the yellow and it's a pentagram. And I was really shocked to see that one because it has a sword on it. You kind of have like the Islamic thing going on. So when Nimrod got killed by Shem, worship ceased and followers of Nimrod became very afraid. Till Semiramis devised a plan upon discovering that she was pregnant, claiming Nimrod died because the incarnate sun god came down and impregnated her. Thus, she turned Nimrod herself and her illegitimate child, when born, into glorified gods and deities.
And
so she's kind of the mastermind, actually, after Nimrod leaves the scene.
how many people actually believed or like, sure, the sun got you pregnant?
Yep.
But it formed a whole system of worship.
Yep, for sure.
Interesting birthday, December 25th. That was Tammuz was born on December 25th.
Yes, that's what she claimed. That's how we get.
So wait, this is Nimrod's mom gets pregnant by her son.
Yes.
Calls it the sun god that made her pregnant, and then has just clarifying that. In my mind there for a second.
Yes. So she claimed that her son Tammuz, there we go, is the sun god. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. She claimed that Nimrod was the sun god, her the moon goddess, and their child was named Tammuz. Birthday, December 25th.
And isn't that just crazy? I mean, it's just crazy that we honor that day.
I know.
In our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no coincidence that they pretty much, like, if you think about when Jesus really would have been born in the Middle East, first of all, you don't have Santa Claus in red. You don't have snow. You don't have a bunch of gifts. They weren't rich enough for that.
Reindeer.
You don't have reindeer. You don't have all these things.
Probably not even pine trees.
No, not at all.
Wow.
And you have a totally different time of year. I've heard, like, basically in June.
Yeah. I've heard it would have been springtime for whatever reason they know that. I guess because they were out in the barn and different things. There's a reason they know because of the way it was. The shepherds were out and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it just seems like, to me anyway, that they chose that date because it coincided with the pagan wheel already. And they just wanted to overlay that one world religion over everything. Yeah. And so Jesus all of a sudden was born on the 25th of December when it was really Tammuz.
Now, how did that come into the Christian faith? That was through are you going to get there? Okay.
I'm trying to I want to add input, but I'm sure it's going to get
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll just continue. Due to fear of being killed and found out, Semiramis made it a secret mystery religion, as you always hear of that. Just Babylonian, Chaldean mysteries. It was conducted underground, focused on mysterious Satan worship, lies, deception, mystery of iniquity, illusion, and the occult. So this is where we have the birthing of secret societies.
Wow. From Tammuz.
Yep. Even way back then. And you can see alcoves. I've looked at how Christian churches in Israel or in the land that they were at, you can actually tell based on what they have in the church that it was Christian or pagan. And pagans really met underneath the ground. Like it was just seriously a cave or some kind of hole. And they didn't have pews. They had marble. It's always like a rock thing. That's where the masons come from. Because they were good with their hands. Always making rock things.
Wow.
And I'll just throw that in there because we're on it. You have the Pythagoreans.
What's
Pythagorean So they are known for their math. Their math is very important to the occult world and numerology.
Yeah.
But they also wore like the Peter Pan hat, the Snow
Yes.
White, and the Seven Dwarfs. The dwarfs all have that hat as
Yeah.
well.
You're talking about
And Peter Pan's kind of like hat.
Yep.
the kind of well, I don't know if it's Peter Pan, but the dwarves, they had like this red like beanie that was kind of flopped over.
Right.
And you'll see it on like a military seal and stuff too.
Yeah, but it's always honoring them, going back to that time because they're one of the first secret societies.
Wow.
I think this is something that people don't recognize too about all these characters in Disney. They have these ties back here to these very dark origins.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't take much digging to look around in that. I encourage you listeners out there, if you let your children watch Disney stuff, look into the origins of that. The internet is an amazing resource.
Mickey
Yes.
Mouse's white gloves was a Mason thing. And all the characters have
Yeah.
those.
Peter Pan wasn't the writer like a pedophile or something? He came up with the Peter Pan story.
Yep. So
Yeah.
that's all out there. You should research it.
We have
Yes.
a video on Peter Pan actually.
You can look that up. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about this counterfeit day of worship that Nimrod created with Baal worship, and Semiramis continued with all of her worshipers. So the apostasy begun by Nimrod, found its zenith in the lavish temples and huge pyramids. I don't know if you guys realize that. Pyramids.
Interesting. And
They-
even the Egyptian culture.
And they like point to the sun. I don't know. It's all about sun worship, right?
Yes.
They point to planets and things.
One of the guys that started our ministry with us, Brandon, he was an architect, took architectural school in college, and he said that there was so much Babylonian learning about even the modern buildings, where they build them, how they face them. They pay attention to where the sun comes. Even
Yes.
today,
Wow.
like all the buildings you see in a downtown city, those are well thought out, and they actually study the Babylonian stuff.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Wow. That's
So-
incredible. Huge pyramids dedicated to the sun god, where men offered animal and human sacrifices. Hislop, who is a theologian of that time as well, writes about the origin of sun worship as follows. The beginning, then, of sun worship and of the worship of the host of heaven, or astrology, was a sin against the light, against the true God himself, a presumptuous, heaven-daring sin. As the sun in the heavens was the great object of worship, so fire was worshipped as its earthly representative, along with the sun as the great fire god, and in due time identified with him was the serpent worshipped.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
The sun worship and serpent worship go hand in hand.
They do, and fire worship.
So all around the world, you see people worshiping dragons.
That's right, the dragon goes there too.
snakes,
Yep.
and sun for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
in many different forms, whether it's pyramids or these circular discs that you were showing us in the symbols.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, we really see how the fulfillment of the Bible saying that the dragon will deceive the entire world, and they're all going to worship him.
Yes. Yes. That's important to understand, like you mentioned, that understanding that Satan masquerades as the sun god, the fire, dragon, and serpent.
Wow.
If you find worship of any of those kinds, you've pretty much identified Satan at the core.
Which it's in New Age and everything too. The Kundalini inviting that serpent to your crown chakra. I mean, it's like really
That's
in
right.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
That's right.
I'm just thinking of all the major corporate logos who have changed their symbol to a sun. I mean, Walmart used to just be like Wall Star Mart. Now it's a 6-pointed sun.
That's so interesting. Didn't
BP
even think
used to be
about
a
it.
green shield.
Huh.
Now it's a green sun. I mean, suns on everything. Dole, all these like hotels. Like basically every major corporate logo is an eyeball, a triangle, or a symbol of the sun. Like literally, it's
Yep.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Revelation 18:23 talks about the great merchants were the ones that
The
were
rich
following,
man,
were
And
deceiving
deceive the
people
world through
with their
sorcery and
sorceries.
pharmacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting because, the root of all evil is money.
Love of money.
Yeah, or the love of
The
it.
love of
Yeah,
money. Thank
it's-
you.
Yeah, these huge corporations that buy into this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're really just kind of giving, like we would, if you started a Christian lawn mowing company and you kind of made the T in that company a cross or something. You've seen that. You've seen like these local owned businesses that kind of throw a cross. These are major corporations and they know who they serve and they know, okay, they're Masons and things like that. So they're going to make their corporate logo a triangle or a symbol of the sun or an eyeball because they're showing their allegiance just as
Or
a Christian would.
666.
Yeah,
Yep.
that Disney,
That's
Walt Disney right there.
But it is an allegiance thing. That's kind of key in understanding this. So we'll continue on in
Along with
the sun as the great fire god and in due time identified with him was the serpent worshipped. In mythology of the primitive world, says Owen, the writer here, the serpent is universally the symbol of the sun. In Egypt, one of the most common symbols of the sun or sun god is a disk with a serpent around it. As the sun was the great enlightener of the physical world, so the serpent was held to have been the great enlightener of the spiritual by giving mankind the knowledge of good and evil.
Oh, wow.
At all events, we have evidence, both scriptural and profane, for the fact that the worship of the serpent began side by side with the worship of fire and the sun.
Man, it's amazing that scripture and secular history all tell us the same thing, and yet people still be in denial. You know, it's just that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, for sure. So Samuel Bakioki is also a well-known writer on historical events in biblical times. And he writes, there is no question that the existence of the planetary week with its sun day, dies solis, I'm not sure if I said that right, but is crucial for determining any influence of sun worship on the Christian adoption of Sunday observance. Inasmuch as the sun, before the existence of the weekly Sunday, was venerated every morning. Every morning. And one more here. Socrates Scholasticus states that the 4th century Rome had ceased to worship on the Sabbath. He mentions Sabbath for some reason here. And they had ceased, so they always had before kept the Sabbath.
Even the Romans.
Well, that's
That's
right.
interesting.
The ones that had, started. While Alexandria held its love feasts or Eucharists on the first day, substituting it for the Sabbath as kept in other churches.
So basically they were like, there's all these pagans out here that are keeping this venerable day of the sun. They worship the sun. Why don't we just do it on Sunday too? That way we can all kind of go to church at the same time. And maybe we can even recruit them in. I mean, maybe they did it with good intentions. Who knows? I don't know. But you can't take a commandment of God and say, let's just do this. Let's do it this way instead.
Right.
I mean, that's what the error was with Cain. Cain and Abel, you know, like
he was doing something good.
Yeah, Abel
Worshiping
offered
God.
a sacrifice. Yeah. Abel gave the sacrifice the way God said to, with a spotless lamb, and Cain gave the best he had, which was his vegetables, but that was not what God asked.
Right. Exactly. We can't tweak what God asks of us.
Yeah. Even if your heart is in the right place, God knows my heart. God knew Cain's heart.
Yep.
He was given the best he had, but he still didn't do what God asked.
Right.
I
Good
think that's a
point.
really important part for people to kind of consider when thinking about this topic. You know, you can do the wrong thing with the right heart. You know what I mean? Like you have to listen to what God says in the Bible and do what he says in the Bible. We cannot just take that and be like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
And there's the thing, though, like the Bible talks about God winks at our ignorance.
Yes.
And he judges according to the light that's been given us. So if we don't know any better, God basically is like, it's okay, you worship me according to how you knew. But once you know, then you can't say, oh, well, God knows my heart.
Because,
What is in your heart? Is it in your heart, I want to worship God the way he asks me to, the way he knows how is best for me in my relationship with him? Or is like, I've been doing this for so many years, it's tradition, I'm just going to do it anyway. And surely God won't care. Like, no, it's in the scriptures, you know, and it says that his scriptures do not change, right? Like what he says will stay, it will stick.
I'm glad you brought that verse up about winking at our sins and ignorance. But it is our responsibility to seek out truth. And we live in the information age, so there's going to be a lot less excuses for people in our day and age, and even if you're seeing something like this, at this point, it's your responsibility. Search it out. What do you find? And then you have to make that decision, and then you will be judged on what you know.
Yeah.
So there's a study for you. If you haven't studied the Sabbath out,
That's right.
look into it. Yeah. You have to at least look into it.
And we've got an online Bible school that's completely for free. And, you can look through any of these things for yourself.
Amen.
And I actually want to encourage people. This is actually how I got into this, is one of the pastors challenged me to look up Tammuz from the Bible.
Wow.
It was directly in the Bible. And you just take it from there and you follow it down its rabbit trails to all the different gods in the Bible. And you'll find out where all this comes from. And then do your historical research online and everything. Tie it together. So.
Man, we waste a lot of time in our lives just watching mindless entertainment. There's a world of things to discover out there,
Yep.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So here is where this idea of it becoming part of the Christian world came into existence. The Dies Solis was evidently the most sacred day of the week for the faithful of Mithra.
Mithra, isn't that the who the Lady Liberty is kind of modeled after?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
It is also, if you get into the higher hierarchy of the Catholic Church, the priests and the cardinals and everything are on a different level of priesthood within Mithra worship. And you'll find that in Freemasonry and the like, I guess. So it's really interesting. A lot of the secret societies have all of those different hierarchies or levels to work through. But yes, it was the most sacred day of the week for the faithful of Mithra. And like some professing Christians, they had to keep Sunday holy and not the seventh day biblical Sabbath.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I had to keep it.
Yes. The gods have arranged the days of the week. So here's acknowledging different gods, not God in general, whose names the Romans have dedicated to certain stars. The first day of the week they called the day of the sun because it is the ruler of all the stars. As it was then, so it is today. The day of the sun, Dies Solis, Sunday, was always the most prominent day of worship and stood at the head of all the days of the week. Following the scriptures and 10 Commandments, we see there is no question that the Roman Catholic Church fully comprehends that the scriptures absolutely require the observance of the biblical Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, called Saturday today. Cardinal James Gibbons fully admits that Sunday keeping is a Catholic institution based solely on the traditions of the early church fathers. The edicts of Emperor Constantine, the first person to mandate it, in 321 AD.
Mandated.
I think it was on penalty of death.
Wow.
If you don't keep the Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
So they had their challenge even back then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
There was an agenda back then too.
Ecclesiastes says history repeats itself. There's no new thing under the sun.
Yeah.
That's right. The edicts of Emperor Constantine and the ecclesiastical authority of the Catholic Church in the councils of Laodicea decided this in 336 to 364 AD. Gibbons also admits that the establishment of Sunday worship is not based on the authority of the scriptures. So he comes out and he just says this.
Yeah.
And he's going to make a very, I guess, bold statement here. You may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we never sanctify. Rome's challenge to Protestants is that if they truly believe the rallying cry of the Reformation, sola scriptura, they would reject the Catholic tradition of Sunday keeping and would be ardently keeping the seventh-day Sabbath as God commands.
There's an evangelistic series happening in my church right now. And the speaker, his name is Eric Flickinger. He's a representative of It Is Written, a really phenomenal TV ministry. He said in all of his years that he has been doing these evangelistic series, doing TV presentations and everything, he said on live TV, he would tell the viewers, I'll give you $1,000 if you can show me where in the scriptures it says that the seventh day Sabbath has been changed to the first day of the week, Sunday, as the day of worship. And nobody's ever been able to show him from the scriptures that it's been changed.
Well, these are the people who are telling you we did it. This is when it happened. And basically to say otherwise is, I've seen some more scriptures about this. They say to say otherwise is dishonest.
Yeah.
They're saying if you say that Sunday's in the scriptures, you're really just being dishonest.
Wow.
And so they're telling you nowhere in Genesis to Revelation, but yet people will try to say, they bring up certain verses like it says, what was it? The offering was gathered on the first day of the week or something. And
Jesus rose on the first day of the week, and that's
Paul was preaching.
Jesus changed it, but it doesn't say it anywhere. Even in fact, if you look at the who was it? Was it Mary Magdalene and another Mary that came to Jesus on the first day of the week on Sunday? It says that when they wanted to anoint his body, and wanted to buy spices to do so, they waited until Sunday. They wanted to do it Friday, but the Sabbath is kept sunset, Friday sunset till Saturday sunset. They waited, and then Sunday they went and to embalm Jesus's body. So they kept the Sabbath. In fact, Jesus kept the Sabbath in the tomb because on Friday he died. He didn't do anything on Sabbath, and on Sunday he rose again. I mean, he did it himself. And then you could see that people say, "Oh, the Sabbath was there for the Jews." Well, in fact, the Sabbath was created in Genesis before the Jews ever came about. Right, for all of humanity, it was created.
Jesus said it was created for man, not Jews.
And then obviously you have the Ten Commandments. And then if you look at what happened after Jesus's resurrection, the people came into the church, right? The Christian church was started. They still kept the Sabbath. It wasn't like done away with or anything.
Preached to the Jews and the Gentiles alike on the Sabbath. And I remember in one of the scriptures it says that Paul was preaching to the Jews on the Sabbath, and the Greeks were like, "Hey, we want to hear this message," and he's like, "Well, come back next Sabbath." He could have said, "Hey, come back tomorrow, the new Sunday that we keep," but it's never in scripture.
Yeah. In Isaiah, it says that in heaven, when we go to heaven, we will be worshiping in heaven from Sabbath to Sabbath, right? That's future. And then also, if you look at the writings of the Catholic Church and the Vatican, they say themselves that, there's literally a questionnaire like, which day is the Sabbath day? It says the Sabbath day is the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday. And then they say, well, who changed the Sabbath day? And it says, we changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday, the first day of the week. The Catholic Church admits this. I don't know if we can put it on the screen or something.
Right.
But
and all this.
It's literally right there. And unfortunately, as paganism entered the church and as Catholicism and the Vatican tried to sway the Protestants into a different direction and do away with the Reformation, that's when the Sunday, both Sabbath and Sunday were kept. And then eventually Sunday was observed more happily and joyfully, and it was more of a fun day than the Sabbath day. And then the Sabbath day was completely demolished until Christians rediscovered the Sabbath is the day of worship that the Lord put in the Bible. Why are we keeping Sunday?
Right. A good point to make, though, is, of course, you're going to keep a day that you're not going to be killed for keeping.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, not everyone is, but most people are going to just give in and be like, of course, I'm going to keep it happily. Sunday, sure.
Right.
It's just a day.
Sabbath.
But that's how subtle Satan is. He's so subtle and sneaky, and he's got a long time.
Yeah.
And he's got an agenda. He's got a plan for this one world religion. So he starts with something that seems relatively whatever, like it's not that big a deal. We're just going to keep Sunday instead of. So now you got a lot of people just breaking that one little commandment. And then over time, it just gets easier and easier. Now you got Christians that are doing yoga at their church.
Yep.
You know, it's just like a little bit more. So they call it creeping compromise. It just keeps coming in. You know?
I think a question that you have to ask yourself is if you were presented the truth and you want to do what God wants you to do, what are you going to do with that information? Are you going to say, well, I really don't care what you just presented to me, and I don't care if it's the truth or whatever like this. I'm just going to go out of ease. My whole family does this and whatever. I mean, you really have to respond to truth in the way that, like, okay, I saw it. Now what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Don't just disregard it because it's easier to.
Jesus said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." Right. And so something else that was presented at church during this evangelistic series that was really interesting to me is somebody asked a question. Well, does it really matter for my salvation if I keep the Sabbath or not? And so this presenter, Eric Flickinger, he said, well, think about it this way. If it was any other commandment, let's look at thou shalt not kill. And he said, what if you have a guy that comes to a series like this, right? And he's a serial killer. And one day a week, he goes out and he kills a couple of people every single week. For years, he's been doing that. And all of a sudden, he's presented with the commandment, thou shalt not kill. He's like, man, I can't kill anymore. Sucks. You know, I'm used to this. My friends do this. My family does this. Will it really matter to God? Can he just not just close his eyes and let me enter into heaven, even though I still will continue to kill people once a week? It's the same question. If you present them a story like that and you ask them, will that person go to heaven? Will God just say it doesn't really matter? No, of course not. So, and I think it's even in the scriptures, if you break one commandment, you break all of them.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to read that actually because I was thinking that I was like, well, maybe one commandment's not as necessary as the other. But so right here in Matthew 5:19, it says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So, I mean, somebody might look at the fourth commandment and say, like, that's really not
that's the least commandment.
He's saying if you break that one and teach others to do so, which there's a lot of people teaching, like, you don't got to keep it this way or whatever, you're going to be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Not that you're going to make it to the kingdom and you're just going to be like a janitor. That's not what it's saying. It's saying the kingdom of heaven is looking down on you. Those that are in heaven are looking and saying, you're the least. But those who teach them and do them, they will be called great by heaven that's looking down. So I've heard people say, well, at least I'll still be there. That's not what the verse is saying. It's saying the kingdom of heaven right now is looking down and saying, those are the least and these are the greatest.
I wanted to make a point real quick because we're on a good track right now. But it says here, I'll just, our second paragraph here, I know it's large, but it mentioned traditions of the early church fathers. And I know that a lot of people are actually about studying traditions. And the Bible talks about that. There are 2 Bible verses, maybe we can show that, that actually talk about putting away the word of God for the traditions of man and not to do so. And we need to heed that. This is exactly what you are doing when you take up the other religions of the world. It's all man-made. So
I know those scriptures. Matthew 15:3, he says, Jesus speaking, but he answered and said unto them, why do ye also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? So he's saying you're seeing the commandment here, but you're going to keep your tradition instead. And then he says it somewhere else too. In Mark 7:8, he says, for laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men as the washing of pots and cups and many others such things ye do. And he said unto them, full well ye reject the commandment of God that ye may keep your own tradition. And he says, you're honoring me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me.
that's right.
It's a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof to keep the commandments, the power to have victory over sin, to obey God and all these things.
And that was the verse that I was thinking of, that last one.
Yeah,
you hit it right on the head. We are going to see, like we mentioned companies, logos. We have the chakra. The third eye here.
Wow, I've never thought of Google Play in that way.
That's
Yep.
crazy.
Lucifer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really
The
fascinating.
App Store, that's a dead giveaway. You know, the compass and ruler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't even see that before.
But
I'd seen-
I'm
Facebook
so
logo.
blind.
Gmail before. I've seen that, Google, but that's wow.
I mean, if you see one logo, you might think that's just coincidence, but if you see all of them,
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm. Wow.
I mean, the Facebook symbol as
Wow.
well.
even
pretty
the
interesting.
colors.
Just a bent type of cross with dots instead of more wood columns alongside it.
Uh-huh.
That's just so strange.
And the little thumbs up. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yep. But here's where it kind of all comes, together for real. Because you have in this idea, like I said, the chakras it's the tree of Kabbalah. But in the tree of Kabbalah, you can actually plot out the same pagan wheel of the seasons.
Mm.
And it's just depicted here as IHS.
Mhm.
Is this just Jesuits?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. And outrightly the pentagram with the statue of Baal
Mhm.
going on. And here we go. Here's the Tau cross that I was talking about. The Maltese cross, the Latin cross. So it's interesting that people the sun cross is there and it's just basically, a plus sign with a circle around it. Most people think nothing of that.
Mhm.
And when you do the plus sign, you have, not that we've made it mean something different today, but
Right.
you're basically showing in a way that we've based our construct of math
Mhm.
on this concept as well.
Mhm.
So it just all centers around all of it. And of course, we have it. That's the Babylonian one again.
Oh, yeah.
With the squiggly lines, let's just get into this real quick. The squiggly lines are actually sperm,
What?
Interesting.
and the straightened lines are a woman's eggs.
Interesting.
And so
And that-
on the Babylonian sun wheel, you have the squiggly lines.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they always had that kind of sexual incorporation to it.
Always.
I mean, even in the St. Peter squares and that kind of like, I know it's like people say it's a key
Yes.
as well, but
Yes,
yes,
it is.
it's also phallic and
Mhm.
I
Exactly.
don't know, you call it
Well,
woman phallic.
Yeah, the obelisk is a
But-
phallic.
A yoni.
And
Yoni,
the
yeah.
dome is a pregnant belly. It's all
That's
about
right. It
fertility.
is.
Right, fertility, yeah, was a big part of what they had
Yes.
incorporated in the
But you can
design.
see the sun wheel right there in the
Right,
middle of
right,
the square.
I just
Right.
want to add in here that very few people know that the Catholic Church's origins are pagan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's really sad that a lot of people, unfortunately, are. And I don't mean to look down on Catholics. My grandparents were Catholic. I was baptized as a baby in the Catholic Church.
You're talking about the system. Not
I'm talking about the
people who
system,
have-
Right.
not the
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And so, as a system, as an organization, it has a lot of pagan roots. In fact, if you look at the statues of the saints,
Mhm.
originally they were literally pagan gods
And idols,
and
yeah.
idols. So Constantine, who was the emperor at the time, he became a Christian. And so Christianity became very popular. In order to be in government and everything else, you had to be a Christian. And so people became Christians for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And so, in order to make it even more popular, they literally just took the pagan idols and statues and said, well, instead of being this god, now it's Saint Peter. Instead of being
Yeah.
this god, now it's this disciple. And we are all going to worship them.
Yes.
Which, even though the Bible clearly says don't worship statues, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So it really has pagan origins, and it's a pagan system that was then Christianized, and that's the Catholic Church that we have today, which is really sad because there's a lot of people who are very genuine Catholic people or Catholic Christians who want to worship God that way, but they just don't know the origin of it.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I seen a presentation on this, and there was a statue. I think, if I remember correctly, it was years ago, but I think it was a short-haired, curly-haired guy, and he's got like a lamb over his back, and it's represented as Jesus Christ, but the statue itself predates Christ.
Yeah.
So it's like it can't possibly be Jesus because it predated him. But here's an example of we're just going to change this God into, we're going to Christianize it, Christianize paganism.
A really good documentary I watched years ago is Revelation, The Bride, the Beast, and Babylon by Amazing Facts.
Yeah,
I would highly encourage anyone at home to watch that. You can watch it for free on YouTube. There's a load of history in there and historians talking about the exact things that we're talking about right now.
We'll put a link to the description.
And if you want to watch Walter Weiss' 100 hours of total onslaught series like I did, you'll learn a whole lot of stuff.
Yes.
I think we've all watched it.
Yeah, it's really good.
He's instrumental in me coming back into the church.
Yeah.
And when I saw that guy, man, I came up to him and gave him a hug when I first saw him. And I was like, man, I'm only here because of you.
He helped your mom too.
He helped my mom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Solid stuff.
Yeah. I like to make a point. The church, as it was known to be, and Christians, when we say that Constantine became a Christian, that's why you need to use these.
Yeah.
Because it was not true at all.
Right.
It was fake.
It was fake.
It was fake.
Yeah.
He, again, using the terminology we're talking about, he goes, of course I'm worshiping the Christian God on Sunday. And so when you overlap them, all of a sudden he could say, I am a Christian, and march all of his troops into the water when they're on their way somewhere and go, you're baptized now into Christianity too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that, but there's a huge part in this when you really trace back the origins of the word church, even that comes from this transition here. We didn't use the word church ever before until then. We had temple, we had synagogues, and we would know that that was really where you were going and that you were Christian because you would go to those places. I'm not saying that that's synonymous with Christianity at all, actually, or worshiping the true God, Christ Jesus, but I do know that none of this has to do with that. And they actually coined the term. That's why you hear the church in a lot of articles and newscasts and everything. And the church always stands for the Roman Catholic Church.
Wow.
People take that.
Church.
Yeah, they take that as, if they're Baptist or whatever they might be, it's my church. It's just all churches put together, but it's actually the Roman Catholic Church. So they get a voice all the time. And then everyone else kind of goes, oh yeah, it's my church too, but not really.
This picture, you haven't talked about it yet, but this is Dagon, the fish god, and he's wearing this, it looks like Nimrod or something, but yeah, he's wearing this fish head hat, and it's the exact thing that the popes always wear. You wonder, like, where did this come from? When you see, like, as a kid, you're like, what is he wearing on his hat? Where do they get this idea from? It dates back to Babylon.
Yep.
The Maltese cross.
Yes.
I think he even has like the Ankh on his hat, which is like totally Egyptian, you know. And it's like there's some serious like questionable symbols that are involved in that.
Yes.
Oh, the sun.
Yeah. And he usually wears pretty much all of them somewhere on his clothing.
Yeah.
What was it? Sign of Horus is also, of course, one of the ones we mentioned last time. And it's kind of like the Celtic cross, except without the circle, basically. And he usually has that on his sleeves.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it is. It's all there. If you really want to look, you will find all these symbols.
I've seen the Pope definitely reps the Maltese cross, and I've seen like memes that say he's a part of Umbrella Corporation that's Resident Evil, but even that Resident Evil uses the Maltese cross. What is the representation, the illustration of the stake hanging here?
So that is what, of course, we see usually as Jesus being on the cross, and didn't always have to be. We always depict it as having a bar
crossbeam,
a crossbeam, and it isn't always depicted like that.
Yeah.
That was still the cross of Tammuz that they used to, kill all the criminals on. And it was that you were actually in defiance of their laws to Tammuz. You were being penalized.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the verse. I mean, it's a tough one to swallow, but the verse that says, consider it a blessing when they persecute you, So to be hung like that because you're defying forced pagan worship was really an honor for God, and those people are going to be blessed in the kingdom.
one that I'd like to point out, and this is hard for some people. It was hard for me when I realized, because you have the sun wheel in the Vatican courtyard there. You have the Kabbalah. But you do have the Hebrew one too. Because we always think, oh, Jesus was Hebrew. He was born and raised into Judaism. They must be clean of this. It's not in there. But if you look, it's all the same stuff on there. And they just call it different things. And they still have some of the same rituals, though.
So was this kind of symbolism come after Jesus's time?
Before. Yes.
So even though he was a Jew, which was the religion God instituted, unfortunately, it also got tainted, which we can see all over the Bible over and over again. They started worshiping heathen gods.
Yes, exactly. Like where we began, it actually started, I believe, some of this began with its symbols at the beginning of the flood. I mean, before it happened.
Wow.
And then it kind of got seeded into Nimrod, and he just birthed it into more stuff.
Do you think some of this stuff comes from like the Talmud and some of those extra biblical or extra books that the Hebrews and they use?
I don't know for sure, but it might. It definitely might.
I mean, it's kind of Satan's MO, right? He's always like going to pick apart God's people the best. You know, he's going to aim his attack at the true church. So
yes. What is printed on the Eucharist? The sacrificial bread, when you go to the Catholic churches, it's always a wafer, round, and it usually does have the squiggly lines and the IHS printed on it.
Sometimes it's just like the circle with the plus in it too.
Yes. So you know, and I've heard at least that they used to hold it up to the sun and bless it that way, putting it over the sun. And the same thing with the eye thing. When you cover one eye and you look into the sun or the pyramid type thing, you are kind of acknowledging that God and blessing them and honoring them. So
I've always heard it kind of talked about as maybe also meaning Isis Horus Set.
Yes, it is.
Which is very, tying back to Egypt.
So it's taking the story of Tammuz, Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. We're going to hit that hard in a different presentation.
Nice.
But it is their mimicry of the deity of that, because you've got Isis, Horus, and Seb. That is Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz again, just in Egyptian.
Wow,
Yeah. So here's where we need to take heed, as it says, because the Lord wants us to know something about this. It says, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them. After that, they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. What thing soever I command you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto, nor diminish from it.
Wow. I mean, that says everything, really. Yeah. Whatever God says to do, whatever he commands, don't add to it like the Jews did. And they added all these things, like you can't walk so far on the Sabbath, and just everything they kept adding, making God's blessing a burden, and don't diminish from it. Meaning, like, don't say, hey, it's the 9 commandments instead of the 10. But it's saying, like, how did the other people worship their gods? Oh, they kept the day of the sun. They, did it this way and that way.
They had a festival. They did this.
And we're like, hey, let's just make this about a Christian thing. So you got this day, December 25th, Tammuz birthday. And it's like, well, why don't we just say it's Jesus' birthday?
Yeah.
Why don't we just say these pagan gods are actually, Peter, John, Paul, I mean, you see it really happening in our day, what this verse says not to do.
Mhm.
Yes. And it ties back. I mean, you said it in a different way, or this verse says it in a different way, but basically, don't keep the traditions of man again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's all, again, it's how did these men make these gods and their traditions and rituals that they created? Oh, don't ask about that. Don't do it,
Mhm.
is what God's
It
saying.
says God hates it.
Yeah.
If you change a heathen way of worship, whether that's a holiday or whatever, and say, "Oh, we'll do the same thing, but we're going to do it unto God," it says God hates it.
Exactly. You
Mhm.
can't change it out for a different God and just say, I'm worshiping the Lord.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting that every culture has a worship element to it.
Mhm.
I mean, you would think that like if it was fake and there's nothing else out there or anything, right? Why would we be doing that? Why would every single culture across the planet have this element part of it?
Yes.
One of those has to be the truth,
Mhm.
you know. And I believe like the devil has counterfeited this one thing more than anything else, and he has just literally roped the whole world into this nonsense.
Yeah.
He has, yes. So this is just a bigger picture of that. This is the Wiccan. I mean, this one's, I hate to say it, but it's really bad because it has the planets. These symbols mean the different genders even you've got going on. You
Wait.
Is there any
have,
of them? Or?
There's multiple
Yeah.
genders.
that actually is a thing. And you'll find that that's from biblical times as well.
Oh man.
That's a totally different topic.
Yeah, right.
I have a
Wow.
whole like thesis that I didn't write, but
Wow.
I've read on it. And you have the zodiac signs, you've got the phases of the moon, you've got the festivals, and you have what else?
I see
I don't know.
the hexagram right in the center.
Yep.
Mhm.
And the different triangles.
Clarify, that is not the Star of David, and it's
No.
not the sign of Israel. You know, it's just
Mm-mm.
been associated with that, but it's a hexagram. It's a very occult symbol that dates way long ago.
Yes.
Probably predates the pentagram or whatever.
Mhm. A lot of the occult civilizations use it as so same as above as below.
Yep, you got two
Whatever
arrows.
happened up there is going to happen down here, vice versa. You know, and it's like
Yes. So just overlapping, we need to understand or start to understand that these are the same things. So there you go. You have,
The hexagram right there in the middle.
yep, you do in fact have the hexagram in the middle.
The sun.
Yep. And it's just walking your way up it in a different way.
Satan has a flavor for every person. You know, for me, I was drawn to the dark stuff, Ouija boards, tarot cards, all that. But there's some people that are like, I'm kind of scared of that. And he's like, oh, I got the new age. It's colorful. And, you know, he's about meditation and stretching. And, you know, he's got a different bait for every fish out
Buddhism
there.
is all calm and
Yeah.
loving. You know, it's
Right.
like-
So again, the Hebrews have their entire calendar that overlaps right onto it as well. And then the biggest thing is we need to understand everything is culminating in a one world religion of, quite honestly, the occult or Satan worship and Wiccanism. So that's why you really can just end up on this, which is kind of where we're going to end because it is the Wiccan calendar. It's what we're going to be picking apart next and seeing how this is really what is being told to us are the holidays that we keep today.
Wow.
Wow.
And it's the Sabbats, which
Yes.
is, these are witches' Sabbaths.
That's
basically.
right. They have 8 of them. And it is interesting that they took the word Sabbath and they wanted to rebel against it again and turn away from it. So they just called it Sabbats. Well, we're going to just give you a little bit of a taste for this real
All right.
quick. So breaking it down just a little bit, we have Imbolc. I hope I'm saying that right. But you'll see that here on the wheel. You have, it's called In the Belly of the Mother, which of course that has much more occult meaning behind it.
But for like fertility kind of things and
Yes.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and definitely we'll deep dive into that.
Yeah.
But it literally means use milk for some reason. But we'll find that it has everything to do with St. Bridget's Day and New Year's.
Interesting.
And then Ostara, which of course you can probably hear that, what it's going to mean. Melding of Ishtar and the goddess Oestra, or Ostara basically, known as Easter.
Yeah.
And Beltane, May Day festival with a maypole usually, first day of spring, known, I don't know why, but it was known around the Workers' Day or International Workers' Day, recognizing Mother Nature and Father Sun, celebrated by planting greenery and celebrating just nature in general.
You said the maypole. Is that the pole that everybody has a ribbon and they walk in circles? And
Yes.
wrap it around?
And
It
that
looks so fun. though.
it does, and they do that in Europe a lot still. But it has, of course, those fertility cult.
You'll see it at every pagan celebration. They do
Yes. And then Lithia, which is right here. It's Juneteenth, which I know people today, it doesn't mean what it means today at all. It had this undercover meaning the whole time, this pagan religion type of meaning. And we have just covered it up with the idea of,
Isn't it representing like minorities, racial minorities and stuff? Yeah.
Yes, basically. But it was a midsummer of honoring the sun and fire.
Wow.
So before Juneteenth didn't have anything to do with that?
That's right.
Huh.
So many
How
things
did
just predate.
how did the honoring minorities get attached to it?
For more information and for answers to your questions on the holidays in depth, please be sure to join us for Holiday Deep Dive Part 1, 2, 3, and 4.
What I have learned, I can't say this, conclusively, but it just seems like whatever they can overlay over the actual dates of paganism, they will call it whatever they want, just so that people stop their work on that day and venerate that day.
Interesting.
That is really interesting.
Yes. So I'm going to butcher this, but Lugnasad.
Sounds good.
Nailed it.
Okay, good. The sacrifice to the god of grain, or loaf mass, associated with Labor Day.
So again, this was before we talked about, Labor Day, we just want to take a day off from work. It was something pagan, but then it was overlapped with something that we can all appreciate.
Yes. And my understanding is it was already there and they just went, we're going to get the people to worship this too. Everyone's, nationwide is going to keep this. So we're just going to give it a name that people go, they're celebrating me, that I work hard and I get time off.
It's interesting that it's called loaf mass. You have that word mass in there, which you automatically associate with Catholicism. They do the mass, but I'm guessing that mass predates Catholicism even, because this is pagan origins are really old.
Yes, they do. And you're right. So Mabon, also known as Thanksgiving, Samhain, Samhain or
Samhain.
Samhain. Thank you. Or Halloween, All Saints Day, and Yuletide, Christmas. Candlemas is somewhere in there. I think it is Christmas as well.
Okay.
But mass is truly, it is a key word there. You keep seeing that over and over.
So Mabon,
yes.
How did this happen with Thanksgiving? Was this a pagan holiday, and did we now celebrate, being thankful and I don't know, I guess our ancestors coming to the United States? How did it happen?
So the witches and Wiccans are usually very handy people, and they believed that you would start gathering more wood and you would have your last harvest. And of course, worship the god of grain. And so that already was there in history. They had that. And then again, there's this beautiful story. It might be true. I don't know. But that we come to the United States and the Native Americans help us with our first winter, and we share a feast with them. Thanksgiving for all that we have.
Right.
There's always interwoven stories to make you endeared usually to that holiday, to want to keep it as well when you don't realize it has pagan origins all along.
You really wonder if those are really true.
Our history is just,
that just
it's
told
fake,
to
man.
us, and we just retell that, and we make little kids programs about it. And
I think a lot of Native Americans were treated badly, whether it was slaughtered or ran off the land or whatever it was. I don't think it was as nice as they make it.
No, I don't think they had a I don't think they had a fresh turkey and everything on the table, stuffing. Yeah, we're the Pilgrims. We have stuffing in our turkey, and it's going to last for 10 generations.
Well, even that, we're going to get so deep. Food has everything to do with feasts, right?
Yeah.
So even food has a ritualistic perspective to these gods.
Wow, yeah.
That you'll find for each holiday as well.
Interesting.
Wow.
Maybe not all of them, but they do play a large part in each of them.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the next one because this has just set the whole groundwork that paganism is still alive and well all around in our culture, infiltrated everything from corporate logos to days that we celebrate. And so the next presentation you have is going to really break down each of those celebrations, where they originated from, why we keep them the way we do, and maybe even what should we do instead of keeping those days, or maybe keep them a little differently. But this has been very eye-opening. I hope that it was a blessing to you guys out there. I hope you learned something new. If this was interesting to you, please give it a thumbs up. Every little interaction with this video helps it get into the algorithm, helps it spread to other people. If you're not a subscriber, click that subscribe button and share this with family and friends. Tell us in the comments if you agree or disagree or have any other information. We love interacting with you guys. We love reading those comments, and it really helps us. We like to know, what do you want to hear about next? What didn't you like? What did you like? And so we just thank you guys for being here. If you want to support this ministry, you can do so by donating at littlelightstudios.tv. There's a donate button there. We also have merch on lightwear.shop that helps support this ministry and helps you to share your witness by wearing your witness. And if you guys have little ones around and you want them to be able to watch good, wholesome content, we don't often promote content for kids, but we're making content for kids at Little Light Kids. So help us out over there and give us a subscribe and watch the videos and like them and help that channel grow. We love you. We can't do this without you guys, and we'll see you next time on LED Live.
If you're looking for good, wholesome, educational content for your children, subscribe to our new channel, Little Light Kids.